Welcome to the Futurebuild podcast, where we bring you in-depth conversations with the innovators, leaders and disruptors shaping the built environment. In this episode of our retrofit series, we're tackling a challenge that often goes unseen, but is growing rapidly beneath our feet: subsidence. With more than 20% of UK homes now considered at risk, particularly those with shallow foundations, aging infrastructure or clay soil, subsidence isn't just a structural issue. It's a sustainability issue, a cost issue, and increasingly a resilience challenge. Today, I'm joined by Freya Chapman, Head of Residential for the UK and Ireland at Mainmark. They're a global specialist in ground engineering solutions. Now, Freya brings practical experience and technical insight into how we can stabilise, strengthen and retrofit our homes and housing stock using modern, sustainable techniques that are less disruptive and more effective than many people realise. From drainage to diagnosis, piling to policy, this is a conversation about connecting the dots between what's beneath us and what we're building towards. So let's dive in. Freya, absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start off, and we start off on every podcast like this, about what got you into the built environment and what's your career journey look like?
So I'll be absolutely honest with you. I'm trained as a special effects makeup artist. That's where I started my career. Quite a challenging educational path, let's say. So I never saw myself in this. The job that I do now, I didn't even know existed. I didn't know it was a job. Not great at school, neurodiverse, so that classroom environment wasn't great for me. And when I was pregnant with my son, my father's actually a civil engineer. So went into the office one day and ended up having an interview. And I had no idea what geopolymer was or ground engineering. And he always, very good at speaking, my dad, but very much sort of a cryptic crossword. So you have to sort of work out what he's on about. Really, really bright, but I had no idea. So went for this interview and I got the job. And I wouldn't sign a contract because I thought, I'm going to be here for 3 months. My son was 8 months old. I thought, I'll just get 3 months out of it and find something else. And before I knew it, I loved it. So within the first 4 weeks, because of my neurodiversity, I almost overly obsess and hyper-focus on things. So that was suddenly my hyper-focus. And I was like obsessed with ground engineering, never heard of geopolymer and resin. I was like, what is this? And the first time I saw a building lift, that was it, I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. And it's almost a bit like a dark art because one, I didn't even know this existed. Suddenly I'm in this role that, I was essentially in internal sales, but then year on year, I pretty much doubled my wage year on year for the first 3 years, worked my way up in my previous company, and I was hooked. And it became part of me. One of my colleagues, and we work together now, he was able to break things down into a format that I could understand, and then I could elaborate. So David Headley has been a real part of my career journey, and funnily enough, my dad trained him.
Yeah.
So there's a really nice story there, and then me and David work together again. He's the head of the infrastructure and commercial, and I'm on the other side on the residential.
So you've touched there just on so many points we're going to bring in this podcast. I think you're a great advert how we need to open up the built environment to people that aren't aware of it. Before we get on to that, and I think, you've mentioned loads of stuff there around, what we're going to be talking about, which is the sort of subsidence as well. But before we start that, love to break down the company you work for, Mainmark, what it's, and your role within it as well.
Of course. So Mainmark Ground Engineering, a global company, started in 1989 over in Australia. So this was after the Christchurch earthquakes, really focusing on liquefaction, which is seismic related ground movement. This was with resin injection, and then they moved over to New Zealand and similar, chasing earthquakes at this point. They went over to Japan, and this is where the JOG, so computer controlled grouting, was born, which is a multi-point solution, really good for lifting structures. Wow. It's insane, it's amazing Japanese technology, and that's patented to us, Mainmark. And we came over to the UK in 2016 and have been growing sort of year on year since then. We specialise in non-invasive ground engineering solutions. So our core product, and sort of 80% of our work here in the UK, is with the TerraTech ground improvement resin injection solution. It's a 2-part product, 16mm diameter drill bits down to the depth of competent soil, and it's keyhole surgery. So it follows the path of least resistance, whilst doing so fills fissures and micro voids. And once there's nowhere else for it to go, that's when you get the upward movement of the structure itself. So we can re-level structures, increase the load bearing capacity. TerraTech is really quick, so it can take hours, or most residential projects are completed within 1 to 2 days. A bay window, for example, is half a day. Really non-invasive, really quick, in comparison to your underpinning or piling. CFA piling is extremely invasive, and the same as underpinning. There's no requirement for planning at the moment, and it sort of comes into its own with historic buildings as well, because it's really harmonious to both the building and the ground.
So we're here to cover, I think, probably it's probably not spoken about enough as a topic, but is a huge issue in the UK, and that's subsidence. Give us a little bit of a sort of an overview of how big a problem it is, and I suppose as we talk about resilient housing and how we've got, with climate change, etc., how big of a problem it's going to come as well.
Yeah, so currently it's around 20% of all housing stock in the UK is affected by subsidence. It's a real issue, but it's very much a dirty word. So if you or I have subsidence, or the average Joe, as it were, you don't want to talk about it, because straight away there's all those sort of doom articles that you're going to lose sort of 40% of the building's worth. And for me, my home is the most expensive item I've got, So, and then there's the insurance industry, again, is quite negative. Lots of articles around there about sort of getting on that train and not being able to get off. But it's a huge issue. And the most affected properties that we see are the ones with shallow foundations. So we've got Victorian red brick properties, beautiful, up and down the country, on limited shallow foundations. And the ones that are being affected right now, so we're currently in a surge, which means that the clay is desiccated. It's currently at 308, so that's the Morex data, which is Met Office data. Is at its maximum. So the clay is desiccated. What happens when the clay desiccates is it shrinks. So you've got what we call fissures. So as it shrinks, because of the moisture content and the reduction of the moisture within the ground, your structure, if you've got a Victorian property, say 300 to 600 mil foundations, the zone of influence is around 2.2 metres below ground level. Well, your foundations aren't anywhere near adequate. So you've got all of that zone that's shrinking and swelling. Because it's shrunk, now you've got clay shrinkage subsidence. So London, home counties, Sheffield, all on clay. Huge amounts of housing stock in those areas that are affected. Milton Keynes is also on clay. Parts of it, you've also got sands in that area. Huge issue.
And we hear a lot that people really only discover they've got subsidence when they're coming to move. But what are some of the telltale signs maybe that people should look out for?
So the most common place is that, there's a couple of things. If you can, a visual sign, which is a great one, is if you can slot a £1 coin into a crack, you need to seek professional advice. So that's around 3mm. So the 3 to 5mm is where you're going, sort of, you've got structural issues going on there. And you need to seek professional advice, and you can contact someone like ourselves or a structural engineer to have a look. It could be that you've just got a wall tie issue. But a lot of the time, the first things to go are the porches, bay windows, and sort of single-storey structures.
Okay.
Bay windows have always been a bit of an afterthought. And again, talking about the Victorian homes, they were very much an afterthought. And on even shallower foundations, pretty much no foundations, 2 to 3 brick foundation. So they're the first things that you'll see to rotate away. They're also closest to potentially street trees. And you've also generally got some sort of drainage in that area. So check your drains if there's drainage in the area. What's going on in the environment? Are there large trees? Am I on clay? But yes, that sort of slotting a £1 coin into a crack would be advisable to seek advice. And also monitor it. Is it becoming better in the winter? If it is, you've got seasonal movement, which is linked to clay shrinkage, you get these telltale clips and take pictures every 3 months. But seeking advice is always best, because the longer you leave it, the more expensive it's going to be to the superstructure, the above ground structure repairs, as well as you can be pushing the problem deeper. So
you mentioned clay quite a lot. How common is clay across the UK?
It covers a large expanse of our housing stock.
Right.
So dependent on soil strata will give you different types of issues.
Right.
So clay, you've got the expansion and contraction dependent on the moisture content. And then trees come into that as well, because they're obviously taking out the water during those prolonged dry periods to survive.
Yeah.
In the granular sands, water's your worst enemy. So drainage and then flooding. So 2024 was one of the wettest years. We had more flooding than we had in previous years. So that creates washout and micro voiding, and then the structure will then move into that. So you need to make sure that your drains are intact. And a lot of us live on clay pots and old drainage. And the use of unfortunately, a lot of farmland now is housing estates, and we need to do that. However, that does change the way of the land drainage would have naturally gone. We are creating more, unfortunately, floods due to the more cement that we're putting into the ground.
Yeah, I suppose it's the change, as you mentioned there, it's a changing climate as well. And
yes.
we're getting wetter periods of wetter times, and then obviously mass drought as well.
Absolutely. And don't get me wrong, sort of 1979, I love a bit of data. So 1979 was a very long, prolonged drought, and we saw huge amounts of ground movement due to that in the clay areas. And this does happen every sort of 3 years. We'll see a surge. It's definitely getting worse each year. So yes, it's unfortunately global warming and the changing of the seasons is massively impacting this.
Yeah. So talk about the process. So, if I'm a housing association or a local authority, I'm starting to see some of my aging housing stock suffering some subsidence. That's mass panic, isn't it? But what's the process there? And I suppose, are they covered by insurance? What's the sort of steps they need to go through?
So some housing associations are actually self-insured. So first of all, they need to look at their own policy. Second of all, seek professional advice. So, for example, come to someone like Mainmark, one of my team or myself will come out and do a full audit. So we really need to understand the causation. So with any design and competent designer, they need to understand what those causations are and to remove those to provide an all-encompassing design. It might be that combined methodology needs to be sort of adopted. So if you've got a tree, is it that we need to install a tree root barrier? And I'm really keen on the Q-Tex product, which is it's a copper membrane, so it's got Cu2 ions that are released into the ground. It's not harmful for the tree itself, but the roots then move away from that. And you don't have, with plastic sort of UPVC root barriers, you create issues with water. And so one side will be really wet and mossy, and the other side will be really dry and can cause issues with those two zones. And as well as you need to get the drains checked. So realistically, you'd need someone to come out and have a look. How big is this problem? Is it just that you've got a bit of material shrinkage? Because it may well be. Is it to do with stitching and just superstructural repairs? Or do you have subsidence, so you need to deal with it? And the sooner that you take that action, the better, because the longer that goes on. And for example, if you've got a leaking drain, the problem is going to push deeper. The water will always get out.
So talk us through then, maybe some of the solutions then that are unique to Mainmark that you when dealing with subsidence. And I suppose also, subsidence is a word. It's almost like I'll put it in the same category as sort of Japanese knotwood. It sort of puts mass fear into it that that's it. That's my property devalued forever. And it would be great to talk about maybe some of the solutions that you provide and how that affects then, that resale value or that house.
Of course, so subsidence is very much a dirty word. People don't want to talk about it, and they certainly don't want to admit that they've got a problem. So there's a whole array of solutions. To be honest with you, the TerraTech resin solution is one of the easiest to deploy and quickest to install, but everything has its limitations. So there's that. Great for lifting, ground improvement, increased load bearing capacity, so can also be used for change of use or retrofit. And then we've got our TerraFill, so that's sort of mass void fill, cellular concrete. Again, great, it's quick, can be pumped Then we've got the JOG computer controlled jacking. With this, it's a multi-point solution. So it's 40mm diameter drill bits. You have valve points on each of them. You get up to 28 valve points to each computer, and you'll have an engineer sat at both. And it will send a prescribed amount of cementitious material to each of those valve points, so it can lift it really slowly. The most lift we've had with that is 350mm, and that was for an art gallery in New Zealand. An amazing project. It doesn't offer any ground improvement, so we may use the lift there and then go in with another solution. So it might be the Terratec resins, or it might be micropiling or screw piling. So Terratec doesn't work, and everything has its limitations. We would never deploy Terratec on peat. Peat is obviously a natural organic material, and with the resins that we use, there's nothing for it to grab onto. So in those instances, it might be a micropile or a screw pile solution, down to the depth in which we hit competent soil. Again, there's different variants of steel that would need to go in depending on the load, so that how heavy the building is. So we would have to have a look at that, and that would all need to be designed. Then we do also deal with soil nails as well for slope stability issues, because sometimes actually the house and the foundations are adequate, but you've got an issue with slippage. So there's also that side of things. You need to take in not just the whole house, but the whole environment around that property too.
So when the work's carried out, how do warranties work then, and how does the sort of, are people able to resell? How does
Absolutely. So we offer different warranties for different products. So the Terratec, so with it being a resin, a polymer, the design life of that is over 100 years. It doesn't break down in any way. So we do offer an insurance-backed guarantee with that. Our warranty on that product is 50 years. And then the IBG is 10 years. And you can also have a certificate of structural adequacy. Now, how that CSA works is we have an external structural engineer that signs them off. I'm more comfortable with that. It means that they essentially audit our work. So they will say, yes, this has been completed to the standard it needs to be, and they will sign that off separately. So they're not on our books, as it were. And we obviously pay them for that service. But equally, they may come back and say, actually, we need to do X, Y, and Z. So with the screw piles, again, there is a warranty that comes with it, but it's slightly different. So it's 10-year warranty. You can ask for an IBG, but that's additional fee. And again, the CSA, if required. Now, if you're looking to sell the house, you've got to remember that you're dealing with a financial body. So they don't understand subsidence. They don't understand ground engineering, and they definitely don't understand substructures and superstructures. So you're giving them the comfort that this has been done, it's been done to this standard, and these are the warranties. A bit like a FENSA certificate for your windows or your certificate for your boiler. It's the same sort of thing. So you can say, this has been done, these are the warranties, and then you can tick that box within the home buyer's pack.
Brilliant. I'd love to probe into some of the case studies that you've done as well, because I know you've worked on a couple of quite high-profile projects as well, one of those being Finsbury Avenue. Tell us about that.
So this was David Headley's project, actually, a real showstopper. So we were working for the main contractor, who's McAlpines, and this was a sort of facilitating excavation project. And that's another project that I didn't talk about. So permeation grouting is something, and that's what we did there. So they needed to go deeper than the original foundations of the building. You've also got large buildings around, so very much right in the heart of London. And you need to be able to protect the built environment around you. So it's river terrace gravel. So we were injecting into the river terrace gravels, so then they could cut the face. The structures around were then stable to then put in their cap and ring beam. Huge project. Fantastic. I mean, I went there a few weeks ago after historic buildings and places.
Give us an idea of the scale. How big is this project?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, we did it in 3 phases. It was 4 weeks per phase.
Wow. Massive
project. And I don't know all the intricate details because it was David's. But yeah, it was a huge project. And now it's obviously a multi-complex building and stunning.
Yeah.
I was walking down to go to the train station the other day, and I was like, wow, we made that happen.
I think I've mentioned on this podcast before. I'm from the Isle of Wight, and we're a coastal community, and I know we've had huge amounts of landslides recently that's coming through, and I know you've been doing quite a lot on coastal erosion as well. Tell us a couple of maybe case studies around that.
Yeah, so we do coastal erosion, and we also deal with sort of slope stability as well. So a project that isn't too far from you, actually, where it was a seawall. People are losing their gardens to the sea, and farmers are losing their land into the sea sort of every year at the moment. So we went in to treat the wall, which in essence is right on the sea. We had to work with tides as well, but the material itself is inert, so it doesn't affect the water table, doesn't affect the wildlife, but it's also hydro insensitive, so the water can be present, it will push that water out. It was a really quick solution for them. But in Ventnor on the Isle of Wight, sort of looking at huge amounts of work over there at the moment. And it's really complex, which is great, and really enjoy these complex projects. But you've got slope stability issues, and slope stability surveys are notoriously expensive. So you have to have a slope stability survey to be able to put a project together, and that would be done externally to us. So we would commission for that to be done, but that could be £5,000 to £10,000 for that survey to be done, to then put a design together for it. And Ventnor is really interesting from a geology point of view. And you're right, you've got roads that are closed off, you've got houses that insurers are having to buy back, because some of these projects, it's heavy civils that you are going into for residential homes, and well over £1 million in some instances just for the screw piles, soil nails. It's huge, and with a lot of these projects, it's massively combined methodology. So you're not working with 2 or 3, it might be like 4 or 5 different methods to manage these issues, well beyond any budget that a homeowner can afford.
Yeah. So how are they doing that?
At the moment, there's a couple that insurers are actually buying back.
Oh wow!
And this is where it's interesting, because a project that we were looking at only last week on the Isle of Wight, it's stunning, beautiful. There's a real issue with the slope stability, and the structure is now obviously at risk. And the quote for that will go beyond the value of the sum insured. And the only thing they can do there is it's going to be brought back. Well, that's your home, and or they go for an alternative solution, which in insurance, so the FCA, it has to be long lasting and effective. So we will always go for the best solution. We're an engineering contractor, and there should be a factor of safety that's built in, which there always will be. But it's a really complex project, and it needs to be dealt with in the appropriate manner. My concern over some of these is that it will be done at a cheaper method, for example, that won't be long lasting, and nor will it be effective. There's some real complexities over on the Isle of Wight, and it's a real shame, because people have bought their forever homes.
I think those case studies probably show a huge span of work that you get involved in, all the way from those sort of Victorian terraced homes to massive projects in central London to the coastal erosion. Subsidence is happening everywhere across the UK. I know something that you're, as Mainmark are really sort of on top of the game is around those sort of digital side of things and monitoring and the capabilities. Talk us through some of those sort of solutions.
So obviously AI is coming in, and things are becoming much better. So there's several different ways in which you can monitor a property. They're really for the larger complex issues. So I believe we as a company, if you can fix it and you understand the causations and the issues, monitoring is just going to create more of a problem. You're going to be pushing the problem further, deeper, and superstructures will be an issue. But when you've got a large structure and poor understanding in some instances, then monitoring is great. And certainly when you're dealing with a TPO, so when tree law comes in as well, monitoring of a building is key. So you can have digital monitors now. So you have gauges set up, and it's all be accessed from an app. But again, that's not for every project. I wouldn't necessarily be looking at that on every project. We do laser levels, and we also do brick level surveys and ground sort of floor surveys as well on each site visit. This is really just to confirm what we can see. So it's good to build that data, of course, but you can really understand the mechanism of movement and confirm what can be seen by, not by everyone. I mean, I would show a client, this is what's going on, and then they've got the numbers. You can understand the numbers, but it can be harder to understand the mechanism of movement from cracks.
I suppose this is the difference, isn't it, between having a look at those sort of reactive repairs or looking at that sort of proactive strategy.
And I mean, from a so GPR's been widely used for well over a decade. So for that sort of proactive approach, we do have some of our clients in warehousing that will proactively do a GPR, so it's a ground penetration radar, from once it's going from one client to another, one tenant to another, just to ensure there aren't any voids. We should be doing this more often because it's extremely costly for the tenant when they're in situ and say you've got a large warehouse for a retailer, for them to stop for only just 10 minutes, the loss of earnings is huge. So we are trying to drive that slightly as well, and having that proactive approach. And certainly when you're closer to the coast, Avonmouth, for example, historic, an area that's well known for voiding due to obviously the tides coming in and out.
Yeah. So when people are looking at either buying a home or whether it's a commercial property, and it's got a declared subsidence issue, what should people be looking for? So, some advice to them.
First of all, whatever's been done, get the drawings, as in what did they do? What was the design, and then what was actually done on site? Because you can see in some instances, for example, screw piling, that it might be a design, but actually what was installed on site is vastly different. So you need to ensure that, one, the design was installed, and if it wasn't, has it still been certified? And what the causations were. So if there was no understanding of what the causation was, then you would have, I would have little comfort in the solution was accurate. Because we used to just sort of underpin and think that would be fine. But personally, if my ship was sinking, I wouldn't throw out the anchor. And in certain instances, dependent on the soil strata, that's what you're doing with underpinning. So you need to understand the causation. Is it a large tree? Is it drainage? Is it the fact that you've got all of those and limited foundations? And what have they done to rectify that and ensure that fix was appropriate? And what warranties came along with that? Did you get a certificate of structural adequacy? If you had to go down the underpinning route, was it signed off? Did they go through planning for that? Because it should also go on the deeds. So just having that understanding and seek advice.
Did you think it's a time that we need to sort of maybe reframe subsidence, that it's not a disaster, that it has been perceived as, and actually it's a fixable problem?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people will only know underpinning or piling as solutions. And both have come on a lot now. So, the CFA piling that people may think, that you'll see in central London, for example, that's the route that I'll have to go. Or when they don't understand the breadth of different solutions, and it is solvable. I mean, a lot of people that I sort of work with, clients, will now buy subsiding properties because they can buy them at a cheaper rate and flip them. They can do a resin injection solution or a micro-piling, mini-piling, which is going to be quick, simple, and pretty easy in comparison to the others, and make money on those properties. So it doesn't have to be a disaster. And it absolutely should be reframed. And this is really what I do in sort of educating people on options and the right solution for the structure, the ground, and the situation in that property. Is it?
Brilliant. You mentioned this in your intro, and I know it's something you're extremely passionate about, but is about how we attract new talent into the built environment. And I know this is a role that you play, at Mainmark, but in the call that we had before this, you talked about that sort of 250,000 people needed really to plug this skills gap, and I know in your sector it has a huge impact as well. Talk us through this a little bit.
So I mean, by 2029, we're meant to have built 1.5 million homes in the UK. Now, to do that, we will have a gap of 250,000 skilled workers. Now, absolutely, we feel the effects. A lot of the people that we need in our industry are skilled, and now children have to stay at school or in education until 18. You can't actually get an apprenticeship until 16. Well, that's just far too late. They've disengaged. They have no idea what they want to do, and we're pushing them into things that maybe they wouldn't have done, or we could have given them hope. And I don't know why we're not reducing that, because you used to be able to do an apprenticeship at 14. And it would be day release, and you would be given a skill. So when you did finish school, you had a vocation to follow. And even if that wasn't something that you were going to continue doing, you have some sort of skill, and it might open the door to other things. Unfortunately, we don't have those opportunities now, and it's not being funded. So you can do an apprenticeship at 16, which are ridiculous to be able to get into. I mean, in some instances, there's 200 people going for an apprenticeship. A lot of young people wouldn't even know how to sit and interview properly, because you can't even work in Sainsbury's until you're 18 now. It's a real problem, and one in which we need to change. Now, I think, yes, I have a child who's 12, and of course he wants to be a TikTok star and YouTuber, which annoys the life out of me. But equally, we need to bridge that gap. So, a bricklayer can earn £50,000 a year. Why aren't we telling them that? And then why don't we teach them skills on how to blog it? So we combine both. So then they can have their YouTube channel or whatever TikTok channel they want, but we're teaching them both skills. We should be combining it, and that would bring them in. They would be much more interested in doing it then, to get those shots.
I think government is starting to realise this. I think at the recent Labour conference, Keir Starmer did backtrack slightly on that education until 18 side of things. But you're absolutely right. I think I've had another guest on this podcast where we talked a lot about work experience, actually, and trying to reimagine how work experience is done at schools, because that's your first taste of going into employment. And unfortunately, at the moment, it's almost you phone up some of your friends or your father's friends or your mum's friends that have businesses and go and do work experience that way, where actually we need to get people in experiencing engineering, experiencing on-site at that early age. You're absolutely right, the sort of 13, 14-year-olds. So then they have a more defined career path going forward.
And I completely agree. And I think it's also industry need to take control here as well, and go to the colleges and go to government and say, this is the gap that we have to create those apprenticeships, to create those courses in college, because you can generally, there's only really 4 trade apprenticeships that you can do. I can't bring apprenticeships into my industry because there isn't a course that's appropriate. We need more, and it's really hard to drive that change. And the same with work experience. With work experience, health and safety, you can't even take them on site at 14. And it's like, well, we know we've got this massive issue. Create something so they can get their health and safety ticket at 14. We used to. It just blows my mind. And then insurance. It's a minor. You can't have them on site. Well, if they're trained and they have reached this specification for health and safety and understanding, then they can. And if they don't meet that, okay, of course, they can't. They might have to be in the office or in the yard or whatever. But it's extremely challenging. There's too many issues, too many things that are put in the way of us trying to bring new, fresh people into the industry.
And tell us a little bit about what a career in ground engineering could look like for an apprentice.
Well, to be honest, so you could start, there's various different ways in which you could go. So you could start in soil testing. So I do like a soil lab. So you could start with sort of drilling and doing trial pits and boreholes. So you've got that really basic understanding of the ground. You could be working in a soil lab, again, to really understand, 1, how it's extracted, 2, how it's tested, and the different concerning factors around that. Come and work with someone like ourselves. Slight issue is you do need to have some sort of driving license, because unfortunately we're all over the country every day. But there is no apprenticeship, unfortunately, for us, and there's very limited apprenticeships in ground engineering. Normally you have to go down the route of a sort of geotechnical degree or a civil engineering or structural engineering degree. I didn't follow that path.
No.
I'm currently going for my chartership for a building engineer, because I've been doing it for 12 years, but there are other ways, as it were, that you could. But currently, there is no apprenticeship in this sector.
Yeah. I would say, you're very much the face of Mainmark in the UK, and I know one of your roles is that they put you out at various trade shows.
Yeah.
I saw you on it last week, and you must come across huge amounts of sort of students there, sort of, and what's sort of the questions they're asking. You're sort of hearing it firsthand, so I'd love to sort of cover that.
Well, they all want to know what we do, because, and I love that. I love explaining to them, because they don't know. No, they have never heard of this before. And then they ask, how can they get a job? It's generally like, how can we earn money? Is really the biggest question. Yeah. And for me, I'm saying to them, look, get one of the trades and then go into specialist, because that's where you're going to earn the most money. Yeah. So go into the specialist lime mortar, or I call it when you're like putty bashing on the old windows. That's really specialist. And the reality is, this all is learn on site. Yeah. You need to cling on to someone that's got these skills. Get your basic tickets and find someone with those niche artisan skills and learn from them. From Construction Week last week, I'm actually going to be doing a bit of a college and sixth form tour. Oh, wow. And actually I think it's really important. Yeah. So I'm going to be going, I deal with CPDs generally to engineers, consulting engineers, so on and so forth. But a lot of the college heads were asking me, how can we get people into, I was like, let me come and speak to them. And even just speaking to these sort of young adults, they had no idea that this was even an industry. And I think it's really important that all of us as industry leaders get ourselves out there to these colleges and get them excited. Yeah. Show them what career they could have, because the college leaders don't know about all of the jobs. They're teaching specific subjects.
And how is Mainmark supporting this as well? What's your apprenticeship schemes look like, or your career developments?
I mean, we do career developments, but we can't offer an apprenticeship at the moment. Oh, wow. So I've been working with so there's a gentleman called Liam Hanlon, so from the Foreshore Group. He is amazing. So he has a load of apprenticeships with him that he brings on. I mean, he's mainly sort of Liverpool and sort of North Wales, but he works in insurance, and I've been trying to work with him to get some more specific, defined apprenticeships. The most I can do at the moment is I have been going to secondary schools and talking about the industry as a whole. Yeah. But we do. So there's a lady that works for me, and she's worked for me on and off, and she's now going to be moving into a technical role. So she's found her feet, and we very much want to build people up the ranks. Yeah. We've got huge ambition. So we want to be the sort of the one-stop shop for complex ground engineering solutions and a trusted partner. And it's pretty much where we are already, but we want to on a much larger scale. Yeah. We're looking to grow year on year, double the business year on year for the next 3 years. So we are really interested in bringing sort of new people that we can move up the ranks. Really good time to join.
Do that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Going back to sort of subsidence, and as we know in the built environment, a lot of things are driven by policy. Yeah. And there's obviously planning shifts as well. What's needed really to tackle this huge subsidence issue? Because we need to be doing it at scale.
We need to be doing it at scale. And I think, first of all, it's sort of an education piece. So instead of, and a local authority owns a huge amount of housing stock, obviously. So it's really getting in front of them and them understanding that it's not just underpinning and piling. There is a better understanding now than there was sort of 5-10 years ago. However, tenants can stay in situ, because what we're doing at the moment in local authorities, they'll move them. In Milton Keynes alone, there's 4,500 voided properties. Why are they voided? We've got a huge issue.
Well, so they're just sitting there empty?
Just in Milton Keynes alone. and we've got homeless people
Wow.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And this is a carbon copy of I just know the figures because I was talking to someone last week.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's 4,500 empty homes there. But if they were educated and understood that, one, you can fix it within one day. Tenants don't need to move out, and £5,000 to £10,000 is to be honest with you, the average residential project's around 12,000. Completed it within 1 to 2 days.
Yeah.
Well, if you were underpinning, that would take a number of weeks and be double.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's really about sort of people understanding what the problems are, the causations, and then looking at the solutions. And that really we're happy to have a look at everything and put a solution together. So we won't just push you down one path.
Yeah.
We'll look at an issue and then come up with the best solution for it.
Yeah.
But the main thing is education, educating the right people.
So as a government, are they, is there enough support financially to these local authorities?
No.
Yeah.
I mean,
how do we fund this?
Well, this is the thing. So there's money that goes into voided homes, but because of the court cases with damp and all the other things, a lot of money's gone into that. I mean, this year we had the most amount of money released into housing for a number of years, which was great. Still going to be a bit of a shortfall, but it was great.
Yeah.
But no one actually provides us, as in the sort of lay people or the public, with where that money's going. Because a lot of it seems like it's going into new housing stock instead of existing. And why are we building more when we've got empty homes up and down the country that need to be dealt with?
That's what I was just about to say. We talk about a housing shortage and we talk about, mass homelessness and the need for more social housing. But if it's there, sat there voided, and it's, a reasonable amount to be able to fix it, feels like a little bit of a no-brainer. Absolutely.
And I think it's just people don't understand it. I mean, we are seeing a bit of a change at the moment, though, which I'm really excited about. So local authorities spent sort of decades selling off their stock.
Yeah,
they're actually starting to buy it back. So Leicester have brought back a certain amount of housing stock. So's Dudley. So there was a tender that went out a few weeks ago for Dudley. I think it was £15 million going into their homes in that area. So we are seeing that they are buying back the stock to deal with the issues.
Yeah.
And hopefully we will see a change there in those voided homes. We used to have voided homes officers in Liverpool. They were great with it, where you would have someone that would literally just be managing those voided homes to move them forward. We need to see that up and down the country.
Yeah, yeah. And what's your view on the insurance sector? What role do they play in all of this?
So insurance, I work with sort of the biggest loss adjusters in the UK.
Yeah.
You have good and you have not so good. Once you're on that train, it's quite difficult to get off of it. If I had subsidence in my home, would I go through my insurance? No. One, because it's very challenging. It's very challenging so the biggest things that I see from a homeowner's point of view, you can be on that train for 36 months. You can't sell the property. It's not your choice. It's out of your hands.
Yeah.
And you're constantly chasing. So and that's not with every loss adjuster or insurer. The thing is with insurers, unfortunately, the level, the competitive level is very low. So no one's really willing to go out there and do better because everyone's working at the same low level. And I go to these conferences where we discuss about, we need to do better, we should do this. But no one's willing to do better. Yeah. Because actually it's the stakeholders and the shareholders that just want their dividends. And we should do better. We need to do better. But you've also got where we're in a time online where you can get home insurance for, as little as £150 a year. Well, what do you think that's going to be covering, if you've got a subsidence issue? So I think there needs to be, I think the insurance industry needs to get better when we're dealing with subsidence. We need to deal with things quicker.
Yeah.
And this has been the case the whole time I've worked in the industry. But also I think the play-off for that would be that we are going to have to expect higher premiums. And if the service was better, then people would go down the insurance route. Yeah. And you get stuck. I mean, I wouldn't have £12,000 to spend on a subsidence issue. I'd have to put it on a credit card,
Yeah.
And that's the reality of today. So then you're either forced down the insurance route and then you can't sell the home for a number of years. or personal debt. Yeah. And it's realistically, it's quite an uncomfortable position to be in.
Yeah. We talk a lot about, the need for more collaboration in the built environment.
Yes.
And I suppose what we need then is better collaboration between the insurers, the engineers, the asset managers. Are you seeing that at all?
Yeah, with some of them, absolutely. Because, so in London, for example, you've got beautiful street trees, okay? So the local authority will own the tree, and then you've got a private homeowner. So you will see this sort of battle between, and actually the insurer just wants to close it and mitigate it, put the risk onto someone else. The local authority is bankrupt, so, and they can't remove the tree. So you do see these battles that go on for a prolonged period of time, and they're in checkmate. However, someone like Zurich, for example, who insures the local authority as well as homeowners, because we're pushing water around a bowl here, there is more collaboration, but we need to see that across the industry because it needs to be long-lasting and effective as per the FCA. So why don't we all come together and work out a long-lasting and effective solution?
Yeah. I always finish the podcast on a couple of questions, which is, the first one is really, what's the big change you want to see? What could create the biggest positive impact to the built environment? I know that's a massive question.
I think changing the way in which we educate young people in general, and certainly in the built environment. If we don't plug these gaps over the next 5 years, now this isn't a long period. In the next 5 years, the built environment we're going to be stuck. There's going to be huge issues. So we really need to plug those educational gaps that we all know are there. But as an industry, I think we need to come together and promote change and enforce it.
Yeah. And it's very clear to see you're one of those people that are driving that change and, and inspiring others. I suppose that leads nicely onto my last question, which is, who had a really positive impact in you and your career?
A few people. So David Headley was really key in my career, if I'm honest with you. He's only a year older than me, so it's not like I'm talking about. But he had the ability to make really complex ground engineering issues relevant. So he was, a huge help to me, and it's great that we work together again now. My dad was another one of them, but actually one of the people that really made me feel valued as a person was when I was back at college, and I did art, and this is why this sort of role works well for me, because it's sort of complex issues, but also I love the designing of it. And he made me feel valued, that my opinion was valid, and that feeling has then moved on. And I suppose that's why with David, when he was so impactful on my career, was because I asked a lot of questions and he was okay to answer them all. And I might be asking the same question 5 or 6 times in the same sentence in slightly different ways, because I needed to work out exactly what he meant. But he would always make me feel heard and valued. And I think that is really important in that sort of larger piece of ensuring we're bringing the right people in and giving them the time.
I agree. We need those industry mentors, and it's such an important role.
And females,
play. Yeah, absolutely.
We don't see as many females coming through. That has slightly changed. And it had at Construction Week last week. It's the first time I've seen so many females in the room that weren't just marketing, which was amazing. But we need more of them, and we definitely need mentorships at every level. We need mentorships, because even leaders and company heads, they're probably the ones that need the most mentorships in some instances, because they're so stuck in their ways. I think it needs to be across the board, and we need to bring in some sort of mentorship for people in industry.
No, you're absolutely right. Diversity is a huge issue in the built environment, and it's more so actually, on site. And I think that's where we need to really showcase those female leaders, that are making a difference on site as well. So, no, I couldn't agree more with you. This is the final question. It's almost sort of, it's your chance for your final plug. But, if I'm listening to this, I'm a contractor, I'm a local authority, I've got subsidence issues. How do I get in touch? I think Mainmark have some amazing solutions. So how do we get in touch with you?
So you can reach out to us via email, or on our website. You can have a look at all of our case studies as well.
We're going to put links in the bio.
Fantastic. So, or call the office. We are in a surge at the moment, so it's very busy in Subsidence, but we always aim to be out with, to you within 2 to 3 weeks for an in-person site visit. Or reach out to me on LinkedIn. We are Mainmark also on LinkedIn as well. But yeah, website, and you can fill in a form. You can call us, or reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any questions.
Brilliant. We'll put your personal link in here as well. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Great.